Section 3.4 goes more into experiments, and we talk about different types of experiments. And 3.4 day 1 is discussing block design experiments. So how is block design different than a general experiment we've learned so far? So some definitions: a single blind experiment is an experiment where the subjects didn't know what treatment they got. So didn't know. So they don't know if they got a placebo, they don't know if they got what treatment they were getting. A double-blind experiment is an experiment where neither the subjects nor the person conducting the experiment know what they got. So in a single blind, it's just the subjects don't know. So like if I'm doing an experiment on all my students, I know what you're getting, but you don't. A double blind is when neither of us know what you're getting. And this keeps the person from having a hidden bias. Hidden bias is a bias formed by not completely thinking through the experiment and the treatments. It can occur for many reasons, like not treating the groups in identical ways, not creating a double-blind experiment, and a lack of realism in the experiment. For example, if I'm doing a study on types of teaching, right, and I teach one of my classes one way and teach another class a different way, and I want to show which type works better, if I prefer one type of teaching over the other, I might treat the groups differently to show like, oh, see, this one's better because I like it. So that would be some hidden bias. Another example would be like lunch times and like how much you like food. If someone asks you, do you like eating pizza? Maybe you don't like pizza, but when you're hungry, you'll say you like pizza. If you just ate, you might say, no, I don't like pizza. It's kind of like, I know myself when I go grocery shopping. If I'm hungry and I go grocery shopping, I know I buy more than when I am not hungry because I feel like I want to get everything when I'm hungry. So that will be some hidden bias. Example 1. Let's say we are going to survey 6 different groups of randomly selected individuals. They bring each of the 6 groups into the theater at 2-hour intervals starting at 8 a.m. to allow time for the viewing and questioning of a video. The product they will be watching and interviewed about is popcorn in the commercials. Are there any hidden biases? So if in school there's 6 groups that are being brought down to watch a video, and then they're going to question you about that, and the video you're watching is a commercial about popcorn and how you feel about the popcorn. So one group will go from like 8 to 9, then one group will go 9 to 10, then 10 to 11, then 11 to 12. Is there any kind of bias that may happen? What I'm going to add in here is, since it's about popcorn and food, bringing them in at different times creates a hidden bias. And the hidden bias would be, for example, those viewing around eating times may be influenced more. Right, so if you're hungry and you watch it, you might be influenced a little more than if you have a full stomach. So far, we've discussed using simple random sample technique to assign subjects. to treatment groups. So because this is completely random procedure, it does not take into account gender, age, state, political preference, and so on. We can create a more useful experiment design by using block design. So block design is when the randomization of an experiment is restricted to operate only within groups of similar subjects. So like if you want to see how something affects women compared to men, okay, you would pick women and then you'd pick men, and you'd have two different groups to pick from. So split them in the groups, and the groups are called blocks. And then we randomize each block. So again, like I said, if you want to see how women feel about popcorn and how men feel about popcorn, you'll randomly select from the block of women and you'll randomly select from the block of men. This type of design allows us to make conclusions about the individual groups of subjects and to compare the groups of subjects. So you can compare the groups of the subjects if we do a block design study. Example 2. It says men and women respond differently to advertising. We're going to examine an experiment that was designed to look at the separate reactions of 30 men and 42 women to 3 different advertising commercials instead of as one large pool of a group. And this would make sense because in certain commercials, if you just randomly select, let's look at this experiment. There's 72 people, 30 men and 42 women. If you would randomly select 10 people, let's say you select 8 men and 2 women at random. Okay, if men feel differently, then you don't get a good idea of what everyone feels like because men might be influenced differently than women. So this will be a good block design. The men and women are divided and put into 2 separate groups to begin. From these separate groups, a random assignment occurs for each treatment for both men and women. Use a diagram to describe the design. So in this one, we start with 72 people. What we're going to do is we're going to separate them into women and men. So we break them apart, and there are 42 women, and there are 30 men. Oops, I can't write. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to break these apart into groups. It says that they see 3 different advertising commercials, so we're going to break them into 3 different groups. 1, 2, 3 groups. Okay, and by the way, let me change colors for this. I'm gonna put RA, just so we know RA stands for randomly assigned. So I'm randomly assigning them. I'm not doing it by height or alphabetical order. I'm randomly assigning them into group 1, group 2, and group 3. Same thing for the men. The men go into group 1, group 2, and group 3. So there are 3 groups, and there are 42 women. 42 divided by 3 is 14. So there's going to be 14 women in each group. Now there's 30 men, so there's going to be 10 men in each group. So I'm just going to put a 10 here. There's 10 in each group. Okay. Next, each group is going to receive a different treatment. Treatment 1, treatment 2, treatment 3. So they all receive a different treatment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to compare how did the advertising affect the women? And we're going to compare how did it affect the men. And then at the end of all of this, we are going to analyze. So basically, we're going to see how did the different advertisements affect the women, how did the different advertisements affect the men, and then compare, did it affect them differently? And that's what we're going to analyze. So for example, maybe men feel different about a certain commercial than women do. And studies like this are done all the time in marketing and things like that. So that is all we got for 3.4 day 1. We'll add more details and things to this when we get to 3.4 day 2.